All right, it's the moment you've all been waiting for and the moment that I've been trying to avoid. I'm gonna be ranking all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried in 2023. With a few exceptions. There are some eyeshadow palettes that I tried at the latter end of this year that are not included in this ranking because I don't like to rank palettes that I've only used once or twice. I really only like to rank palettes that I've got my full and final thoughts on, so there may be some palettes missing from this countdown. Hello and welcome if you are new here. My name is Rachel, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. I love eyeshadows. They are my favorite part of my makeup. If you like eyeshadow palettes, especially indie eyeshadows, definitely consider subscribing. We do that a lot over here. I've got 83 palettes to rank, so let's just get to it. Of course, as a disclaimer, the ranking is based on my preferences, what I like to wear on my eyes, different formulas, my personal experience with the palette, and sometimes when it definitely came to like the middle to top, it was based just on vibes. Do I like this palette when I'm holding it, when I'm looking at it? Does it bring me joy? Because honestly, every YouTuber says this, so many of these palettes were so good. There were only really a handful that I didn't like. So this ranking is just like a rough ranking. Coming in at number 83, if you've been here before, you already know what it's going to be. And this is the last time I'm going to talk about this on my channel because these are technically decluttered from my collection. They're moving on to a better home. I have the Ace Beauté Floral Collection. I personally did not have a good experience with this. It got mixed reviews. Some people really like these palettes. I personally don't. I find the mattes to be too hard pressed, and I was not able to pick them up to build them up on my eyes. I just don't like this sheer of a matte formula. I think it's probably because of the pan shape. The shimmers in this are really pretty. And all of the color stories, honestly, are so beautiful. This one swatched horribly. Begonia, beautiful. Flora, beautiful. Beautiful color stories. I just did not enjoy the matte formula. Coming in at number 82, I have the Dose of Colors and Trevor Eternal Love palette. If you've been here before, you know I've talked about this. I don't think this is a bad quality palette, but I was expecting more based on my past experience with Dose of Colors with the Friendcation palette with Katie and Desi. The mattes in that were super buttery and pigmented. The shimmers were ultra like wet looking on the lids, and I don't feel like the mattes or the shimmers fit those categories. These mattes are lightly pigmented, definitely on the powdery side, and the shimmers are dry. I think this is a usable palette. I think I'm gonna pass this, or I am gonna pass this on to someone in my life that likes more of a sheer type of eyeshadow, but for me, they're just not punchy enough, so that is why it's coming in at number 82. Coming in at number 81, another palette that got a lot of mixed reviews, but for me personally, I didn't love it. Let's put it that way. This is the ABH Fall Romance palette. The color story, honestly, is really beautiful. I will say it is quite deep. Like, I will have to pull in something else for the matte shades. I like a light to dark gradient with my mattes in my palettes, and these are very much mid-tone to deep mattes. And some of the shimmers I don't like in this. This one, Divine, is dry. It literally feels like a matte, but it's claiming to be a shimmer, and there's like some sort of shine, but it's dry, dry, dry. The mattes are also much more thin than I expect from ABH. And like Moonlight, this one is definitely more of a softer shimmer. I just was not impressed with the formula with this. From here on out, honestly, I don't really think any of the palettes are bad palettes. They just might have something that doesn't fit my preference, and that's really what it comes down to. So coming in at number 80, I have the Joa Beauty Escapade palette in the colorway Amazonian. So this is just like a little 6-pan palette from the drugstore, and I quite like the color story. Pretty much has everything I need for a full look, which I always look for in a small palette. I have a transition shade, I have a deepening shade, I have 2 options for the lid, I also have a darker metallic I can smudge on my lower lash line, and I have a satin cream shade for my inner corner. I actually think this palette is good. I just like everything else so much more. Like, I'm never going to go and reach for this palette. I have Natasha Denona minis that I can get the same look out of, and I would much rather reach for those. I've already decluttered this from my collection. I am passing it on, and I think it would be a really good everyday palette for somebody. The mattes are nice, like fine pigmentation level. They're just good. The shimmers are a little bit softer. So yeah, it's not a bad palette. I just like other things more. Coming in at number 79, I have the Ladybug Glow Galaxia Magica palette. So this is a new to me indie brand this year. They did send me a handful of palettes, And this one they sent to me, I think in the springtime. I think this color story is pretty. It is very springtime to me. For Ladybug Glow, their mattes are just okay. Their shimmers are pretty. There are different textures of shimmers in here. There are some smoother shimmers, some chunkier shimmers. I'm not a fan of an ultra chunky shimmer. That's something I've learned about myself this year. I don't really reach for really overly textured shimmers. And like this one called Light Years Away, I wore it in a reel and it almost looked like a pressed glitter. It's not a pressed glitter, but it's very textured and I just don't prefer that formula. So yeah, that's just why it's coming in where it is. Coming in at number 78, I have the other palette I tried from the brand, the Ladybug Glow Pond Lily palette. I just slightly prefer this color story over that one, but everything else I said about the formula stands. The mattes are okay. The shimmers are pretty. There is a multi-chrome in here, which is really pretty, called Tadpole, but it's just okay for me. Coming in at number 77, I have the ColourPop and Alice in Wonderland Lost in Wonderland palette. So, I mean, I think the quality of this one is okay. The packaging, love. Love the packaging on this entire collection. It was so well done in my opinion. And then on the inside, we have this color story. The reason it's coming in where it is really for the color story. I prefer a gradient in my mattes from light to deep. You're gonna hear me repeat myself with that over and over again today, so apologies in advance. But there really is only one deep matte. It's really a sequin shade, a matte with shimmer, but you can use it as a matte if you just tap off the brush. But all the rest of the mattes here are very light. And the shimmers in this are pretty, like they're nice, but again, I just prefer other things more. Coming in at number 76, I have the Pacifica Animal Magic eyeshadow palette. I did receive this in PR from the brand, and I actually think this palette is pretty good. Like, we're getting to the stuff now where it's like, it's pretty good. It's really just for me like an excitement level thing. This isn't the most exciting palette to me. I just love indie eyeshadows, drugstore eyeshadows. It's gonna be hard for a drugstore eyeshadow palette to really like make you wanna reach for it over and over again, unless it's something very special. But I think that if you like this color story and you want to buy something that's affordable, like a large palette, I think it's good. Like the mattes are, I would say, a little bit more on the buildable side, not ultra pigmented, but very easy to work with. There are a couple of different shimmer formulas in here. There is more of a standard metallic, and then there is a little bit more of a shinier, I don't want to say sparkly, I don't want to go that far, but a little bit more of an impactful shimmer. And I do like how many neutrals you get in this palette because I love neutrals. I don't want to also repeat myself 1,000 times saying, I'm not a big fan of blues, but there are only like 3 or 4 blues in this palette, so I'm not really that mad about it, but yeah, that's how I feel. Coming in at number 75, this is definitely an unpopular opinion, but for me, it was a huge letdown, and that is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. So this is the large Biba palette. This retails for $129, I think. I did not pay $129. I paid under $20. Go me. Because I had a gift card, it was on sale, and I had points. So I got it for a very affordable price. I will say one positive thing about this is I love the matte shadows. The mattes are ultra buttery, ultra blendable. I love having these like yummy neutral mattes in my collection, but the cream to powders in this creased on me so bad. It was one of the only times I've ever worn an eyeshadow look out in public and been kind of embarrassed when I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, it looks like I wore this makeup last night, slept in it, and woke up and walked home. Listen, we've all been there. And the shimmers in this are not my favorite. They're a little bit thicker, heavier on the lid. I think her shimmer formula has improved a lot since she created this palette. So that's why it's coming in at 75. Coming in at number 74, I have the Cosmic Brushes Delicious Delights palette. This is an indie brand that I honestly really enjoy. Their formula is very good. Both their mattes and metallics. Yep. See, one reason, and I know that this shouldn't be a reason, but it is a reason. One of the shades came broken, and the shade that came broken is really the only deep shade in the palette in terms of a matte, which I, again, prefer light to deep in my mattes. That is just how I create looks. I really don't ever create a look with all light mattes, or I do, but I don't prefer to. So that is a huge downside. Like, I can't use this shade. I tried to repress it. I obviously failed. But I will say, if you are looking for like a pastel rainbowy palette and you prefer mid-tone shades and you like these colors, The quality is very good. Like, their mattes are phenomenal. I really love that there is a multi-chrome, but with a black-based multi-chrome like this, I need a deep matte to be able to like deepen it up. I would have even liked a deeper matte than this, like a black, which again, I can pull into my collection. I have a million palettes. I can get a black, but I'm trying to rank these palettes as standalone palettes, if that makes sense. Coming in at number 73, I have the Natasha Denona Mini Zendo palette. I love Natasha Denona Minis. They are some of my favorite palettes that she creates. I find that they're like the smallest, cutest little curated color stories. I can pack 3 of them when I travel and create looks mixing and matching, or most of the time, I can create a look with just one. This one, I think the mattes are a little too light for me to create a look that I personally like. I would love a mid-tone and a deep, or a light and a deep, something like that. And then these shimmers are just okay. Again, I feel like her shimmer formula has improved a lot since she's created this palette, and that's kind of the main reason why it's so low. Coming in at number 72 is the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. So I think quality-wise, this palette is phenomenal. The formulas are so good. The mattes are buttery, blendable, and the shimmers in this especially are so special, very twinkly, very sparkly. But to me, this is a black, white, gray palette. That's all I see. And I've said this 1,000 times, but I had an optometrist comment on one of my videos saying that this seems to be like that meme that went around years ago with the dress that was either gold and white or blue and black, depending on your eyes. I don't see pink, I don't see blue. And I said to my husband, I showed this to him, and I said, do you see a pink and a blue? And he said, yes. I don't. I just don't. So for me, it's very one-noted. I will use this more as a companion palette, but trying to rank it on its own as its own thing, that is why it falls where it does. Coming in at number 71, I have the Naruto palette. I don't know anything about the show. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. This is from ColourPop. I did receive this collection in PR. I think this palette is just okay. The quality is just okay. The mattes are pressed very hard in the pan, so they're not super pigmented. The shimmers are just okay. This one here, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it, but this red shimmer, I did use this in a look, and I just didn't really love how it looked. I feel like ColourPop has kind of different levels of shimmers where they have the lowest level, or, you know, in my opinion, the lowest tier where it's not very shiny, it's a little bit dry, not impactful, and I don't like that type of shimmer. So that is kind of what I got from this. There are a couple of other shimmers in here that give a little more to the lid, but it's just okay for me. Coming in at number 70, I have the 2 Hip Dot palettes that came out in the CD cases. So we have the Evanescence Fallen palette and the Corn Follow the Leader palette. I like the Corn one slightly more, but to be honest with you, like as time has gone on, I kind of feel the same about these. I love the packaging. I love the theming. I love both of these bands. It's very nostalgic to me personally, and I love that they did this. I think it was really fun. Both palettes have a mix of mattes, shimmers, and pressed glitters. So automatically, this is being bumped down because of the pressed glitters. Like, I'm never going to use a pressed glitter, so that's here. Both of the palettes have a duochrome, which I don't really love the duochrome in either of the palettes. They're both pretty dry and not super impactful. And again, if I have a duochrome, I want it to be pretty special. But the mattes and the shimmers in these palettes are honestly very good. They've disappeared. Like, once this collection launched, I've not seen anything from them. And actually, it's interesting, they even shut down their website and they're being sold on Loungefly.com. You know, that brand that makes like backpacks and bags? They're being sold on Loungefly. So Loungefly obviously bought them, which I think is interesting. It's a shame because I think if they released like regular palettes with regular pans and a regular packaging and did not put pressed glitters, I think people would enjoy their formulas because I was impressed. Like, I liked the looks. Even though I'm not a blue girl, I really liked the looks I got out of this palette in particular. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of gimmicky. I fell for the gimmick though. I'm the target audience for the gimmick. But overall, compared to everything else going forward, this is just where they land. Coming in at number 69, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Royal Europe palette. I love Nomad Cosmetics. They are one of my favorite brands. This is honestly just a color story preference. And so many people ranked this so much higher in their ranking, and I can see why. Like, if you like the colors, I get it. The packaging is so cool. It's like layered upon layered upon layered of this like plastic jewels cut out. And then on the inside, this is full of jewel tones. So if you like jewel tones and you like a mid-tone to deep matte that are very pigmented, then you would like this. I find that these mattes are almost too pigmented for my preference. Like, I had a slightly hard time working with them. That's how pigmented they were. And then I really love that they have a row of all multi-chromes. And these multi-chromes are really pretty. They're ultra smooth. They're not chunky, not sparkly, but just ultra smooth. And I'm trying to see if you can see in the mirror. Yeah, like some of these, you can see the shifts. Like this one over here, you can definitely see the shift. Just stunning shimmer formula. It's just the mattes. I wish that they were more light mattes, and I wish that they were a little more easy to work with. The only light matte is this blue, which I really don't like using this color blue in my crease. So just the color story preference, and the mattes are a little pigmented for me. Coming in at number 68, I have the Melt Electrip palette. So this was my first purchase and my only purchase from Melt. I'd never tried their eyeshadows before, but of course for years I've heard all about how much people love their formulas. And I've heard since that this is not the typical Melt formula. From what I've heard in the past, Melt has really good mattes and pretty good shimmers, but I actually think that it's flipped with this. I feel like the mattes are just okay, and the shimmers are really pretty. Like, that's how I feel about this palette. Also, I mean, the mattes in this kind of don't all work together most of the time. I can get good looks, and I've gotten a couple of really beautiful looks from this palette. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's okay, and it didn't really live up to the expectation I was hoping for, having heard about the brand before, but I think it's fine. Like, I'm not mad about it. Coming in at number 67, I have the ColourPop Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon for Love and Justice palette. I know absolutely nothing about Sailor Moon, never watched the show, but I did receive this in PR from the brand. And this is really, it's a pretty palette. I mean, I don't hate it, but again, I don't really feel like it goes light to deep in the mattes. This is the deepest matte, and I don't feel like on the eyes it's very deep. It's more mid-tone purple. The looks I got out of this were just very light and ethereal, which can be pretty. It has its time and place, but it's just not my ultimate preference. The shimmers in this are very pretty. There are different shimmer formulas. There's a couple of these like glitter hybrids that ColourPop has been doing this year, where it's a shimmer that has glitter particles in it. That's like, I guess, eye safe or whatever. And some of these are a little softer, which I think goes with the theme. It's just not like the best color story to me of the ones I've tried this year, but I definitely don't think it's a bad palette. Coming in at number 66, I have the Wicked Widow Beauty Tea Time palette. Listen, I love how cute this is with the little bunny and how tiny this little palette is. Wicked Widow Beauty's formula is so beautiful. Their mattes are buttery, right amount of pigment. Their shimmers, to me, are what make them stand out. They are just wet looking on the eye, super like wet to the touch, not dry, just beautiful shimmers. And I like this little palette. It's just, again, color story wise, I'm not a blue fan. There's no like deep matte in here, but if you like this color story, the quality is very, very, very good. The shimmers are just wonderful. I love this white shimmer for the inner corner. It's beautiful, but yeah, it's just a color story thing. Coming in at number 65, I have the Elf and American Eagle Denim Days collection, or palette, I should say. The execution of the packaging is a 20 out of 10 for me. I love it. I used to shop at American Eagle all the time. I still do, but it's very nostalgic with the jeans tag. The feel of the palette is like a denim. And then on the inside, I actually like this color story. It is heavily blue, but I did enjoy the blue looks that I got out of this. But I will say the top row especially, I created a neutral look with these shades and they were just beautiful. The mattes in this are good. They're not overly pigmented, but they're good. And then the shimmers, there's a couple of different shimmer formulas. This Silver 90s Vibes is very shimmery, like very wet looking. And then some of the other shimmers are a little softer. They're not so soft that they're dull looking or heavy on the lid. They're soft in a really pretty way. And I think e.l.f., whenever they do a collaboration palette, their best formula is put forward. And I definitely think with this, I like this formula better than their like bite-sized palettes for sure. Coming in at number 64, I have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Lure palette. This is simply a color story thing. That's really all I have to say about it. Blend Bunny is one of my favorite brands. Their matte formula is like top 3 for me. Super easy to use, especially these bright colors. Like she somehow formulates them in a way that anybody can use them and they're not intimidating. They're really easy to blend. She lays out her palettes, or not all of her palettes, but a lot of her palettes in a monochromatic column form. So you can stick to a column, you can mix and match around. The shimmer pearl is a multi-chrome up here. Absolutely beautiful. Whenever I wore this on my eyes, I would get such compliments because it is just so pretty. It shifts in so many different colors. It's gorgeous. It's just a color story thing. There are blues, there are aquas, which I don't really love to wear an aqua. I don't love a cool tone green. That is just the only reason why it's coming in where it is just a color story thing. Coming in at number 63, I have the Natasha Denona Mini Biba palette. I love a little neutral palette. I like this palette. The only really negative, quote negative thing for me is that there is a cream to powder, and I just don't really enjoy the Natasha Denona cream to powder formula. If this was another shimmer, perhaps, this would have been way pushed up to the top because I think the rest of the shades are good. They're nice, but I don't really like the cream to powder, and that's 20% of the palette. Coming in at number 62, I have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Forget Me Not palette, and this is meant to be an eye and face palette, and I think it's a creative idea. I really don't love using these mattes on my face. I've not really found a combination that works for me personally in terms of those matte shades. I don't like to contour my face, and all of these shades are very cool toned on the face. Even the ones that look warm, whenever I would blend them on my face, they just never really fit my preference. I would much rather just reach into my bronzer drawer and use a bronzer. So to me, that is kind of a downside, but I will say I'm really glad to have this arsenal of neutral mattes that I can use for my eye looks from Blend Bunny. And she did say that this is a different formula than her normal eyeshadow formula, obviously because it's meant for the face, so that makes sense, but I still found that they blended really nicely on the eyes. I really like these 4 shimmers on my face as well as my eyes. So I will get use out of these, but yeah, just I like other things more. Coming in at number 61, I have the ColourPop Aurora Struck palette. Even though this color story is not my favorite, I feel like this is a well-executed blue, purple, green palette. Love the cover. I remember when they sneak peeked the cover, I audibly gasped. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. And then on the inside, they did a great job of taking that cover and putting it into some beautiful shadows. We have light to deep in the mattes and the shimmers. There's several different formulas in here. This silver shimmer, High Latitude, is extremely pigmented, ultra chromy, but there are some other softer shimmers in here as well. The only thing missing for me is like a deep purple matte and a mid-tone purple matte. Most of the other mattes are like grays, blues, stuff like that, but I actually really enjoyed the looks I got out of this. And when I do want to reach for this color story, this is one of the ones I will reach for. Coming in at number 60, I have the Wicked Widow Beauty Scissor Hands 2 palette. This one I did receive in PR as well, and this is giving the same vibe as the Aurora Struck, where we've got a blue, purple, green color story, but I like this one more than the ColourPop because it's more condensed and the shimmers are just beautiful. I'm a broken record with the shimmers from Wicked Widow Beauty, but their shimmers are just stunning. I love this iridescent duochrome called the Bogs. It's a white that goes to like a purple, blue, pink. It's beautiful. And again, the shimmers are ultra wet, super impactful. The mattes are good too. The other thing is the shimmers in this, they're all pretty mid-tone to deep. There's no like real light shimmer except for this iridescent one. So I would have liked maybe a couple of these to be a little lighter. But again, if I'm looking for a look with a blue, purple, green color story, this is one of the ones I would really recommend. And it's one of the ones I would reach for. Coming in at number 59, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Verona palette. So this palette is based on Romeo and Juliet, Love and Death, where we have a double-sided palette here. And I like this palette. I think it's really pretty. I really enjoyed the looks I got out of it. Like everything from here on, you guys, there's nothing major wrong that I can say. It's based on preference, I guess, at this point. I will say the red and pink side, kind of the trouble, in my opinion, that I find with reds and pinks is they kind of tend to blend together. Like if I use 3, 4 shades, I'm talking mattes, it almost looks like I used one shade that I blended out. So there's not much depth difference. There's not much variety on this side. This side I like more, and I got really beautiful looks. And then overall, I will say the shimmer formula in this is not my ultimate favorite. I found a lot of these shimmers to be very hard pressed in the pan. So they're not bad. I like them, but I just like other things more. Coming in at number 58, I have one of the new palettes from Odin's Eyes holiday collection. So this is the Hey Reindeer palette. So these two I am ranking separately because I feel much differently about them. But again, it's more color story. I like this one. I like the other one more just because of the looks I'm getting out of it. This is very cool toned. Apart from a couple of shades, it's very cool toned. A little bit more like dustier colors. And the only real deepening up shade is this brown, which is fine, but I don't really feel like I want to use a brown when I'm using blues. Like, not all the time. I don't feel like it's a cohesive color story on its own necessarily, or let's say I don't find it easy to create looks. I'm not a creative, maybe is what it is. I like it. I think the quality is good. I've heard people say the quality is not good. My experience is the quality is good, but just I don't love the color story as much as other things. Coming in number 57, I have the Glamlite Berrylicious palette with Strawberry Shortcake. Absolutely love the cover and the art and the IP. I loved Strawberry Shortcake as a kid, but this kind of goes along with the things I said about the Verona palette, where reds and pinks, a lot of these mattes end up blending together and looking like I've used only one matte shade on my eye. But I will say the shimmers in this are beautiful. This was only the second palette I ever bought from Glamlite, and the first one I had bought was the cocktail collection a couple of years ago. So this was the only one I had purchased recently, and I was extremely impressed with the shimmer formula. Glamlite shimmers are ultra smooth and sparkly, which is my favorite type of formula when it's smooth and sparkly. And so I love the shimmers in this. The mattes perform well, but yeah, I just have other preferences of mattes that I prefer, like in terms of color story. Coming in at number 56, I have the Wicked Widow Beauty Graveyard Smash palette. So this is, of the 3 palettes I tried from them this year, my favorite. I love a spooky theme. I'm all about a spooky theme. Halloween is my favorite holiday. So that automatically grabbed me. And then this color story is my favorite of the 3. It's a little grungier. It's a little bit more, I don't know, I'm just a little bit more drawn to this. I love this kind of like chartreuse color. This green is really pretty. I love that there's a deep purple, and I love an orange. And again, the formula of the metallics is so, so good. I like that there is this metallic for my inner corner. I was able to create more cohesive looks for me and like for my creativity level, I guess you could say. But there are just things I like more. I don't really have any complaints otherwise. Coming in at number 55, I have 2 of the palettes from the Unearthly Cosmetics Summer Mystery Boxes. So this is our first appearance from Unearthly. They are one of my favorite brands. Some of their palettes are coming in at the very, very, very top, so stay tuned for that. But again, the only reason these are here is a color story thing. They're both basically rainbow palettes, super colorful palettes. These are just not palettes I would be reaching for on a daily basis. They're not palettes I would be reaching for if I'm not testing them. I mean, I might use them as companion palettes, and actually I did enjoy using these together, but there are just other color stories that I'm drawn to more. But quality-wise, Unearthly Cosmetics quality has like stepped up 25,000 levels this year. I liked them before, but now I love them. Their mattes have always been just like really good and pigmented. So I feel like their mattes have remained really good, but the shimmer formulas from this brand have just skyrocketed to be amazing. Like ultra smooth, sparkly, just beautiful. And this has the new shimmer formula in it, and the shimmers are just beautiful. But they're just a little more colorful than I usually would go on a daily basis. But if you like rainbow, I mean, they're not even sold individually. They were only with the mystery box, but maybe she'll release them on their own. I don't know, we'll see. Coming in at number 54, I have the Bella Beauté Bar Star-Crossed Lovers palette. This actually came up very, very high in one of my monthly palette rankings, but I will say I tried one of their newer palettes since this is launched, and I think they're formulas have just gotten so much better that it's kind of like I can't help but compare this to the newer palettes. This is a good palette though. There's nothing really wrong with it per se. The mattes just have improved. They've improved their mattes to be more pigmented, more buttery. These are just good mattes. Like they're good, they're not bad, they're not phenomenal, they're good, they're pretty. I love a rosy pink color story. The color story I have no complaints about. I like the shimmers in here. Some of them are a little chunky for me. It's just not my favorite type of formula, but we do have a multi-chrome up here that is completely smooth. We have some more like regular metallics that are more on the smooth side. So I do like this palette, but again, I'm gonna repeat myself 100 times. There are just things I like a little bit more. Coming in at number 53, I'm ranking 5 palettes together because to me, they're kind of all the same. It is the 9-pan plastic palettes from ColourPop. So I did buy 2 of them in store at Walmart, Mauve and Up and Fresh Greens. They are just really good 9-pan monochromatic palettes. I think the formulas are good. We have this one that's more like mauve purple. Absolutely love it. The Fresh Greens is really pretty. And then I have 3 from the Wish You Were Here collection. We have Weekend Mood, which is like a corally, peachy color. We have Daydreaming, which is a cool tone purple palette. And then we have the Feels, which is probably my favorite, which is like a warm tone palette with a couple of pops of green. I actually found myself reaching for these palettes a lot. I took them when I went on vacation this summer for 2 weeks. I took them with me and I got a lot of use out of them. They're just good. Like the mattes are good ColourPop mattes. The shimmers, there are different formulas within each palette. We have our standard shimmer formula. We have some sequin shades. We have these like glitter hybrid shades. I think they're good. I think they're well balanced, good quality, affordable, which is always great. Coming in at number 52, I have 2 of the palettes from the Perfect World collection between Odin's Eye and 3 influencers. So we have the Flora Story palette from Makeup Just for Fun and the Sea Talk palette from Lauren May Beauty. So Flora Story is a gorgeous, colorful palette for the neutral lover, in my opinion, where we've got muted pops of green, muted pops of purple. I love green, I love purple. I really enjoyed the looks I got out of this palette. I find that the mattes in this are not as pigmented as usual, which may or may not be a plus or a minus for you. I actually really like the palette. I don't really have complaints about it. And then the Sea Talk palette is from Lauren May Beauty, and we have really like a beautiful beachy themed palette. The watercolors, the sand colors, and the coral reef colors. I just don't really reach for blues often, but I do like these palettes. I think the quality is very good. Congratulations to these 2 ladies. They did an amazing job, but you will notice that the 3rd palette is missing because it is going to come in further up in the countdown. Coming in at number 51, I have the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. This did not come out this year, but I did try it for the first time this year, and I love a warm tone neutral look. I love a warm tone neutral look. It's always going to be my go-to. So I definitely feel like I get really beautiful looks out of this. My only complaint I would say is that there's not a ton of variety in here. This could have been definitely condensed down to a 12-pan palette or smaller. There's a lot of shimmer options, but all of the shimmers honestly are pretty darn similar. And there's not a ton of mattes. I definitely prefer a matte heavy palette. And then the last thing is, again, this is an older palette, so I feel like the shimmer formula is okay. It's not great, it's not awful, it's just okay, and I prefer her newer Medi palettes. All right, coming in at number 50, I have the ColourPop 1111 palette. We're kind of in the middle, well, not quite the middle, but we're approaching the middle, and I've got a lot of neutral palettes. I don't know why I stuck a lot of these together. So this one is a neutral palette that I feel has more variety than the bronze palette. We have cool tones, we have warm tones. There are definitely more mattes in this, which I prefer. I love this row of deeper mattes on the bottom that offer different undertones, but we have some more like light transition shades. All of the shimmers here, I think, are very different in terms of undertone. We have one of these glitter hybrid shades. We have a super light shimmer for the inner corner. My only complaint with this is the mattes are very hard pressed in the pan, so they're not very pigmented. But other than that, if you're looking for more of a sheer wash of color with the mattes, you don't like ultra pigmented mattes, this is a good one. Coming in at number 49, I have the Beach Cosmetics Amore in I can never say that word, Amalfi palette. This is, I find, a neutral palette that has even more variety. We've even got some like orangey tones, which I love, love, love. I think the quality of this is so good. The mattes are pigmented. The shimmers are wet looking. They're not necessarily sparkly, but wet looking on the lid, ultra smooth. I think this is a very well-balanced neutral palette that has variety. And that's what it comes down to. Like, I love having variety. I don't love a monochromatic palette. I want to be able to get a few different looks out of a palette. That's my favorite thing. And this really does that for me with great quality. Coming in at number 48, I have the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. I almost forgot what it's called. I really like the packaging on this. I think it's very cute. It's giving Italian summer, which is where I want to be. I don't know about you. This is my first Too Faced palette I ever purchased. I did receive as a gift from someone once a Too Faced palette in this tin packaging, and I liked it. It was one of their holiday palettes a few years ago, but it had been a few years, and I actually like this palette. I don't really have much to complain about. The mattes are really easy to use. I can see why the mainstream market likes Too Faced. They're very easy to use. You can haphazardly blend them, and they don't look patchy. They don't deposit a ton of pigment off the bat. They're just easy to use. And most of the mattes are neutral mattes with pops of color in the shimmer, which I think is also another very user-friendly thing. But I like that they're neutral mattes, but they still have like colorful undertones like this mustard, like this purple, like this corally pink. So you're getting some kind of colorful mattes to go with these colorful shimmers. It's not all browns, which other palettes we're going to talk about do. The shimmers are not my favorite shimmers. They are a little bit, how do I say? Some of them are almost gummy feeling. They're pretty. They're just not my favorite shimmers. For the mainstream market, they're pretty nice, but if I'm thinking indie palettes, they're just other shimmer formulas I like more, but I will say the palette is a good palette. Coming in at number 47, I have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Cosmos palette. Again, I'm kind of in the middle here where it's like, I like these palettes. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. There's just things maybe I would change for my preference. So here is an example of a palette with neutral mattes and pops of color for the shimmers, which I like. I would have liked maybe one of these mattes, or like making one of these shimmers like a purple matte or a pink matte or something that's a little bit more colorful of an undertone to go with these pops of colors, I think would have transformed the palette, in my opinion. But I will say the quality of this one I think is way better than the Fall Romance palette. I like the mattes in this. They're easy to use, and all of these shimmers are really pretty. There's no like real duds of shimmers in here, which I appreciate. I definitely would have preferred this Galaxy shade to be something different. It's a matte with blue sparkles. I'm just gonna basically tap it off to make it a black, but yeah. Other than that, I like it. Coming in number 46, I have the Glamlite Scooby-Doo palette. This palette I like. I love the looks I got out of it. The packaging, like the lenticular cover, is cute, but this is a freaking weapon, man. This is huge. It's as big as my head. It is heavy, and it has sharp corners. So this is what I'm reaching for if someone breaks into my house. The color story actually is pretty. Like I said, I got some really good looks out of this. We had some more lighter mattes, which Glamlite doesn't always put in their palettes. The shimmers are beautiful. Most of the shimmers are mid-tone to deep, and I really can't create a very neutral look out of this. I did try, and I didn't love how it came out, so this is much more of a colorful palette, but I do like the quality of the shades. It's just the packaging is very bulky. If this was condensed into slimmer packaging, it would have made its way a little bit closer to the front of the countdown. Coming in at number 45, I have the Natasha Denona Mini Starlet palette. So this is one of her minis that came out this year, and the only reason it's here is it's definitely light to mid-tone. I would have liked this shade to have been deeper, and if it was, it would have been way further up in the countdown. This is me just being nitpicky, you guys. I have to find nitpicky things when I'm starting to rank all these things, but the formula of these shadows is beautiful, and if you want a very light look, this is a good one. Like if you are someone who's like, I don't want a deep matte, I don't like how she has a deep matte in all of her minis, then you would probably like this one. The mattes are blendable, easy to use. The shimmers are very pretty. The new formula where they're a little bit more stepped up, but they're not like multi-chromes, you know, they're still understated, but really pretty. Yeah, It's a good one. Coming in number 44, this is a smaller palette. I think for my preference is better balance, and that is the Nomad Air Travel Palette. I know a lot of people did not enjoy this palette. They thought it was so boring, but I think it's so pretty. Like, I would get use out of this so much. Like, I would travel with this. And I love the 3 mattes here are perfectly balanced, light to deep. The 3 shimmers are perfectly balanced, light to deep. The shimmer formula for Nomad tends to change from palette to palette, but I think the shimmers in this are very good Nomad shimmers, where they're smooth and sparkly and opaque. I love this palette. I really like it. I mean, there are just other things that excite me a little bit more coming up in the countdown, but I think it's a good quality palette. Coming in at number 43, I have the Fantasy Cosmetica Rogue palette. So this palette is honestly phenomenal in terms of quality. Absolutely phenomenal. This is the first palette I tried from the brand this year, and the looks I created from this were so beautiful. The mattes are just very buttery, super pigmented, and the shimmers from Fantasy Cosmetica are honestly just breathtaking. Multi-dimensional, wet to the touch, look at that. Come on now. And when I first got this palette in the mail and I opened it up and I looked at the pans, I was looking and I was thinking, those look chunky. Like, these look like they're gonna be Fallout City. They're not. They're ultra smooth. They're beautiful. It's just a color story thing. Like, blues are just not my favorite. And it's heavily blue here, you know, but it's really pretty. Coming in at number 42 is another palette that I tried from Fantasy Cosmetica this year. This is the Warlock palette. I like this color story more, and that is why it is moving up in the countdown a little bit more. There are some more like warmer pops in here. You can create like a purple look here. You can create a smokier look here. This shade Profane, the lime green, is not super pigmented. It definitely requires some building, but other than that, I thought the quality of the shadows was so good. This multi-chrome Ritual, I need to stop swatching. This video is gonna be so long, but look at that. I wore it in a video. I didn't film it, but I think I was wearing it in a new makeup releases, and so many people were asking me what I was wearing on my eyes and why I didn't film the look. And I'm so sorry for that. But this is a great palette. Color story is great. I really am looking forward to seeing what they're gonna come up with next year, because they've created some beautiful palettes this year. This one I did receive in PR from the brand, by the way. So we're gonna do a bit of an intermission because we're halfway through the countdown. I want to slip in here a little giveaway for one of you. So to share my love of eyeshadow palettes, I wanted to give away the Odin's Eye Merry Christmas palette. They did send me, with their new Christmas collection, they sent me a new Merry Christmas palette. So I wanted to give it away because I already bought it last year. This is mine. I'm not gonna like touch the other one that I got. It's still wrapped up, but this is what the color story looks like. It is an absolutely beautiful palette, and I know so many of you missed out on it, and maybe you weren't able to pick it up this holiday season, but I want to gift it to one of you. So for this giveaway, in the description box down below is going to be all of the information that you need to know to participate in the giveaway. And this time I am doing a Google form. So you have to fill out the Google form to enter the giveaway. So please check down below in the description box if you're interested in participating in this giveaway to win the Merry Christmas palette. And this is just another way to say thank you guys for your support this year. You mean the world to me, and you have no idea how thankful I am to be able to do this every day. It makes my heart so happy. So thank you so much. All right, now next up we have number 41, which is the Unearthly Cosmetics Dead of Night palette. Again, a blue, purple, but not a ton of blue, more purples, greens. The quality of this is unbelievable. It is the new Unearthly Cosmetics formula where the shimmers are like wet to the touch, ultra metallic. The mattes are ultra buttery, ultra pigmented. It's just a color story thing. Like, I like this color story, but there are color stories I'm gonna reach for a little bit more. That's all, the only reason. If you like this color story and you like the formulas I just said, you would really enjoy this, because I'm a broken record, but their quality has improved immensely. All right, coming in at number 40, we have the Gourmand Girls Warriors Wear Pink palette. This was in collaboration with Syria Soto, who is friends with Christina, who's the owner of Gourmand Girls, who is fighting breast cancer. So this is kind of a breast cancer awareness tribute to her. I love this palette. Actually, this is where everything from here on out is so good, and I had a really hard time placing everything. Everything from here on to like the top 15 could be just moved around, honestly, depending on the day. This is just how I feel about the ranking right now, right this moment. The quality of the mattes is good. They are more of a silky type of feel, so they're not ultra pigmented, but with that being said, they're very easy to work with, really easy to blend. I love the color selection in here. We've got pinks, we've got purples, we've got neutrals, we've got deep to light. We have 4 shimmers in here, all of which are stunningly beautiful. I have no complaints about this. It's a beautiful palette. I got really beautiful looks out of it. Coming in number 39, I have a collaboration with one of my favorite brands and one of my favorite creators. This is the Resurgence palette between Unearthly Cosmetics and Heather Austin, and it is a beautiful, deep, sultry, very fun and unique color story. And again, we have the beautiful Unearthly quality with pigmented mattes, beautiful shimmers. I think Heather created something very unique and different that is not currently on the market. I don't have any palettes that look like this. And I really love, most of all, which is kind of a random shade, but this shade Life is a satin that is from white to pink. I think it is a beautiful shade for the inner corner when I don't want like an ultra sparkly inner corner, but I want something to brighten up. It is a beautiful palette. I absolutely love it. I don't have any complaints. Listen, it was really hard to rank everything from here on out, like I said, so love this palette. Coming in number 38, I have the Simply Posh Berry Icy palette. This was my first palette from the brand that I tried. I couldn't believe I tried it this year. I felt like I tried it last year, but when I looked it up, it was this year. I can't believe it. This is when I started to fall in love with the brand because their formulas in this palette are so good. And you're probably thinking, Rachel, you said you don't like blue. You're right. I don't really love blue, but I did really like the blue looks I got out of this. But I also love this half of the palette a lot as well, where I can get more of a purpley or a warm tone look. But the mattes from Simply Posh are just so easy to blend and use. And the shimmers are so gorgeous. Smooth yet sparkly. They don't feel chunky on the eyes. They don't cause fallout, and most of their shimmers in their palettes are duochromes. So you're getting like just beautiful shifty shades that aren't like over the top shifty, but they just give a beautiful reflect. Really good quality palette. It was my first experience with the brand, of course, and I've tried other palettes from them since that are coming up later in the countdown. Coming in at number 37, I have the Snow Dream palette from the Christmas collection from Odin's Eye this year. This palette I prefer just because I feel like it's a little more neutral leaning, which is just a little bit more in my comfort zone, and it's more warm leaning. I created a really beautiful warm look with the red, with this warm brown, and one of these on the lid. Oh, and this peach. And it was beautiful. The good Odin's Eye quality where the mattes are pigmented. The shimmers, there's a couple of different shimmer formulas in here. Some shimmers that are a little bit more textured, some that are a little bit more smooth. And there is a holographic shade in here, which I think is cool, but I'm not gonna reach for this shade a lot because it's very chunky and it's just not on my preference, but I will say the color story of this one grabs me a lot more. I really love the looks I got out of this palette. Coming in number 36, I have the Glamlight Ghost Face Lives palette. So I will admit the IP is something that draws me to this big time. Scream is my favorite scary movie. It was a movie that I watched as a child over and over and over again. It probably explains a lot about me. I think this is a better executed version of the Xenon palette from Natasha Denona because you have a matte black, which that one didn't. And I think there are several different undertones in the mattes here. I can see blue, and the shimmers, they aren't all the same. We have like a mint shimmer, we have a purpley shimmer, we have like a gunmetal shimmer that has a little bit more of a blue undertone. We have a true gray shimmer here. We have some sequin shades. There is more variety in this palette, and I really like the looks that I created out of this palette. The quality of the shadows is very good, like the good Glamlight formula, but this color story is not my favorite color story, just in general, like grays and cool tones. This cool tone, like gray, not my favorite, but I think if you were thinking about this one or the Xenon, this one is one I would definitely suggest. It's a lot more affordable. and I think has more variety. Coming in number 35, I have the Surrender palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. This came in their Valentine's Day mystery box this year. Color story wise, this is one of my favorite palettes Unearthly has ever done. It is so beautiful. It has browns, so I can create a neutral look. It has rosy tones. It has purples. Phenomenal color story. Love. The only reason why this is getting a little bit lower in the countdown is this isn't the new formula. So I like their shimmer formula now a little bit more. The shimmers are still good though. The shimmers are still good. They're still really pretty. A couple of them are duochromes, but I love this color story. I hope, Amanda, you should release this again one day in the new formula. That would be amazing. I always love a palette I can get a neutral look out of and a colorful look, and that is how I feel about this one. Coming in number 34, I have the Lunar Beauty Siren Sunset palette. This palette is so beautiful, you guys. I really enjoyed the looks I got out of this. I have been really into like deep vampy looks this year. I don't know what it is. For many years, I really just wore light colors on my eyes, but I really love the deeper tones in this. The shimmers in this are really pretty, very stepped up for the brand. He did include some multi-chromes in here. There are some like iridescent duochromes in here. And I actually like that there are quite a few cool tone neutrals in here so that I can create a neutral look or a colorful look. Of course, for me, this like blue matte, I'm not really gonna use that shade, or this like teal matte, I'm not really gonna use that shade. But the rest of the shades, I absolutely love. I really love the looks I've gotten out of this. And I love these cool tone neutrals because they're not gray. They're still browns, rosy tones. They're not gray. I don't know. It's a really pretty palette. Coming in number 33, I have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sugar and Grunge palette. I love the theming behind this collection. Maggie, the owner of Blend Bunny, saying this is like her teenage grunge, early 2000s, late 90s kind of side coming through. And I really love the color story. It's super pretty. Again, this blue row, if you take this out, I love all the rest of the shades in here. But that's just, again, a preference thing. It's just a preference thing. Quality-wise, it's very good. The good Blend Bunny mattes. The shimmers are really pretty. It's just really fun and playful and really pretty. That's all I have to say about it. Coming in at number 32, I have the Glam Light Chucky Crazy in Love palette. Love the theming. This color story is really pretty. It is gray cool tone neutrals, but there are some pops of purple. There are some pops of red. And honestly, anytime I created a look with this palette, I was blown away at how beautiful it was, if I do say so myself. I don't know, it's gotta be the quality. Like, the quality of these shadows is so good. The mattes are so pigmented, blendable. The shimmers are super sparkly. And I love this like deep vampy color story that has those pops of red and purple. There's just something so like sexy about it and like vampiric. I feel like a vampire. That's what it is. It's a beautiful palette. Coming in at number 31, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Ghost Town palette. See, like looking at this, I'm like, should this be higher up in the countdown? But everything else too coming up is just so beautiful as well. So I'm not changing my ranking now, but just know that I love this palette. Love the lenticular cover, love the spooky theme, and the color story is really, really pretty. The quality of these shadows is phenomenal, top notch for the brand. Really beautiful blendable mattes, really smooth and sparkly shimmers. I love the layout here where we have kind of three sections, a neutral section, a blue section, and a green section. Loved the looks I got out of this, but of course you guessed it, the middle section is kind of the section that it's just very cool toned. There are other palettes I like a little bit more, but I think if you like this color story, the quality is very, very, very good. Some of Nomad's best. Coming in at number 30, I have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sickly Sweet palette. So this was her Halloween release, and it is a quote pastel palette. But in my opinion, this is my favorite pastel palette in my collection because I feel like it's a pastel palette done right, where we have a lot of pastels, obviously, but we also have mid-tone and deep shades so that I can create a fully cohesive look from this one palette. That made a huge difference to me. If this was all just light pastels, it would not have ranked this high up in the countdown. Because I'm the type of person, like, I definitely prefer to be able to create a look with one palette, but I do also love dipping into this if I want a inner corner highlight that is a pastel that is not available in the palette that I'm using. I've reached into this so much for that. So I love having this to pull from for that. The shimmers in this are really pretty, very smooth, very sparkly, really, really gorgeous. And I just love the variety of tones that she did. And I love the like bag of candy vibe that this gives where it's not the columns. I appreciate that she's mixing it up because how many times are you gonna do the column? You gotta mix it up once in a while. It's a good one. Coming in number 29, this is my favorite Blend Money palette that launched this year, and it's the Machina palette. This is the palette that literally just came out recently. I really love the cover of the palette. And then on the inside, I really like this color story. There's something about it that just, it's weird. And I think that's why I like it. It's kind of weird. To me, there are two very distinct sides, and I think she did say that one side is like the nature side and one side is the AI side, and I can definitely see that. We've got more like industrial colors here, a little bit more like muted colors, and then we have these flowery brights. I just love this palette. I think it's so pretty. I love the shimmers in this. This shade down here, Cyborg, is a super pretty iridescent toppery shade, and all the rest of the shimmers in here are really stunningly beautiful. I love this corals column. I love the greens. I always love having a matte white and black in her palette because I reach into them all the time. This is a really pretty palette, really different and kind of weird, but that's why I like it. Coming in at number 28, yeah, everything from here on out, well, including the last couple. Listen, everything's good. You get it. Number 28, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Don't Be Jelly palette. I remember using this and being honestly shocked at how absolutely beautiful the looks were that I got out of this. The color story, it's colorful, but also intuitive to use. I really love, especially the shimmers in this. The shimmers are next level, and I'm pretty sure this was, no, it wasn't, but it was one of the first palettes where I really noticed the big change in the shimmer formula. A lot of these shimmers are like shifty shades and they're just beautiful. They're just absolutely beautiful. Now, of course, as a color story, there are other color stories I prefer over this coming up in the countdown, but I love this palette. I think the quality is so incredibly good. Number 27, we have the Glamlight Rick and Morty palette. This is the highest ranked Glamlight palette this year. It is a big palette, but it's slim. So I actually don't mind it. I don't know anything about Rick and Morty, but I absolutely love the packaging on this. I think it's so vibrant and like so cartoony. And I don't know anything about the show, but I love the mirror. Like, what is he doing? Maybe you can explain it to me in the comments. I don't know anything about the show, but I think it's funny. And this is like a bright, vibrant neon rainbow palette. The looks that I got out of this, I know I'm a broken record, but the looks I got out of this were so beautiful. Good quality glam light mattes, good shiny sparkly glam light shimmers, and there are more light mattes in here, which we don't always get with glam light. It goes light to deep. We have a black, we have purples, we have some blues, but you know, it's fine. We have warm tones. Love this colorful palette. It is quite large, but I don't feel like it's repetitive. It's sleek enough that it's not a pain in the ass to store. It's a good one. Number 26, we have the Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny Haunted palette. So they did come out with 3 palettes this year. One of them is not in the countdown because I literally just got it and I've only used it once. But the other 2 that they came out with, this one is coming in second. Now, usually I can't decide which one I like more. They really are interchangeable to me and they're pretty similar if I'm gonna be honest with you. But this Haunted one is so beautiful. It is more matte heavy and I love the grungy matte tones in this section of the palette that you're getting. Again, the Gourmand Girl matte formula is blendable and very silky. So not super powdery, not overly pigmented, and the shimmers are beautiful. We have some textured shimmers, we have some smooth shimmers, but I love this like grungy Halloween color story. It's beautiful. I love a grungy color story. Coming in number 25, I have the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, whatever it's called, this palette. I love the packaging with this like tie-dye ombre situation. And I like the color story a lot. This palette is so beautiful. The shimmers are beautiful. ultra shiny, ultra sparkly, ultra special, really beautiful shimmers. And the mattes are really pretty. The only reason this isn't much higher in the countdown is there are 2 creamed powders. I just don't like the creamed powder formula. I know I probably shouldn't have even bought the palette knowing that, but there are some palettes I've tried where I don't mind the creamed powder formula actually. It just depends on the palette. And then this shade down here, I'm never going to use that shade. I just don't like shades like that. But I will say the looks I've gotten out of this are really beautiful. And if you like this color story and you like the creamed powder formula, you wouldn't be disappointed. Coming in number 24, I have the Simply Posh Cozy Cabin palette. Love the theming. Love the theming. It makes me want to curl up on the couch with a blanket and some hot chocolate. I think it's so cute. Now, one of my shades is broken, so I'm going to be really careful holding this up. This one over here is broken. This color story is absolutely beautiful. We've got warm tones, we've got a neutral row, we've got greens and blues and purples. I've loved the looks I've gotten out of this, and the formula of this one is so good. The mattes are pigmented, blendable. The shimmers are smooth and sparkly. Just beautiful. Just beautiful. I don't really have anything bad to say. It's a beautiful palette. Coming in at number 23 is from the same brand. I just prefer this color story. It is the Citrus Punch palette. When they first sneak peeked this color story on Instagram, I was so freaking excited, and it is... Listen, it's a warm tone lover's dream, and I'm a warm tone lover. This was a palette in the summertime I was so excited to reach into. We've got bright neon yellows, like I made a Sprite look. I called it a Sprite look. We've got these like purples and corals and oranges, and I really love the looks I got out of this palette. And the quality of this one, definitely the shades are harder pressed in the pan. So I don't think the quality is quite as good as the other 2 Simply Posh palettes that I talked about earlier. But this color story to me speaks to me so much that I put it a little bit higher just because I really enjoy the color story. And even though the shades are pressed hard in the pan, I still like the quality. It's not bad quality. I still really enjoy using this palette. She's a good one. So coming in number 20, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Devour palette. So this was their Halloween release for this year, and love the artwork and the packaging. I want to be her. I want to be her. And here is what the color story is. This is beautiful. Again, the shimmers, Amanda, I don't know what you did with the shimmer formula this year, but it is next level. I love that there's these 3 like kind of iridescent shimmers. I always love having these for the inner corner. They're just really pretty. And we've got more deeper, vampier shades here. I created a green look, which I really enjoyed, but you can create deeper, like smokier looks. The only reason this is not as high up as other palettes is there's only one light matte in here, and it's a green. So I don't really feel that it goes with these other deeper mattes. That's my only complaint. Like basically I have to reach into another palette to get a lighter mid-tone matte. It's not a big deal. I can do it. But if I'm judging the palettes and ranking them as standalone palettes, this one just comes in a little bit lower, but number 20 is still pretty darn good if you ask me. I said the number wrong. This is number 22. Coming in number 21, I have the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyqvist, one of the Halloween palettes. This is the Little Ghost palette. Love the packaging with Angelica on the front. And then on the inside, we have this beautiful color story. And she created 2 Halloween palettes. The other one is coming up higher in the countdown. And they both have very different vibes. This one is more like childlike, fun, whimsical, candy, that kind of a fun vibe for Halloween. I created a really beautiful purple look with this palette. We do have a row of warm tones on the bottom. There's a lot of blues. That's kind of why it's bumping it up a little bit. It's just a color story preference thing. It's not a quality issue at all. We both like to have light to deep gradient in our mattes, so we definitely have some more pastel mattes that you can blend out with, use as inner corner highlights, and then you also have like a super deep dark matte that you can deepen up the look with. So I appreciate that in a palette if I'm going to use it on its own. All right, we have approached the top 20. How exciting is that? Man, there's some good palettes coming up. Buckle up, get ready, here we go. So coming in at number 20, I have the Birthstone palettes from BH Cosmetics. These obviously did not come out this year, but I tried them this year, and all 3 of these, honestly, are incredible quality. Incredible quality. And I like all 3 of the color stories. Let me just quickly go through them. Pearl is a beautiful, compact, Gorgeous neutral palette. I can travel with this, create looks. The shimmers are ultra wet and shiny. The mattes are very, very good. We have Diamond. This is more of a companion palette, but I can still create a beautiful cohesive look. The shade's stunning. The silver is stunning. And then my favorite of the three is Citrine. This is like a gorgeous yellowy brown, warm neutral color story. All three, honestly, like the quality of the shades is incredible, especially for the price, but just incredible in general. Coming in at number 19, I have the Cosmic Brushes Muse palette. This is my favorite palette that they released this year that I tried. This color story is so gorgeous. I love a color story where I can get a neutral look as well as a little bit more of a colorful leaning look, and that is what you can get out of this. We've got pinks, purples, greens, neutrals. The matte formula in this, I don't think is quite the same. Maybe it's just how they're pressed in the pan as like the Serenity palette, which was the palette I tried before this, but still very good. And the shimmers in this are what really impressed me. I love a smooth yet sparkly shimmer. They're not chunky, they're not textured, they're just really gorgeous on the eyelids. They just glide on with ease. This color story is gorgeous and the quality is so good. Coming in at number 18, I have the other Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny palette. This is the Nightshade palette. So like I said, I kind of go back and forth between this one and the Haunted, which is my favorite. And I was thinking about it before I sat down to rank the palettes. And I looked back on some of the looks I created with this palette, and I just love the looks I created with this. They were just smoky, deep, yummy. They were just yummy. I love purples, I love greens. I'm a broken record with it. We have different shimmers in here. We have a couple of like iridescent smooth shimmers. We've got some more impactful shimmers, definitely more chunkier shimmers, which again, not my favorite, but still love this palette. Love the color story. They did a wonderful job. Coming in at number 17, I have the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon palette. Now, I do not have their Dragon's Eye palette in this countdown because I've only used it twice and I need more time to use all of the shimmers in that palette because there's a lot of shimmers. So this is the only What's Up Beauty palette in my countdown, but I absolutely love this palette. They typically do neutral mattes with pops of color on the shimmers, but there is one pop of color for a matte here that is like a pinky purple, so I do appreciate that. I think it brings a lot to the palette. I love the selection of shimmers, and these shimmers are smooth. Like, they're not chunky or textured. They are just really beautifully smooth, shiny, impactful shimmers. I did receive this in PR from the brand, and their matte formula is very good as well. Very smooth, blendable, easy to use, a little bit more on the silky side, so not overly pigmented, but this is a gorgeous palette. Coming in at number 16, I have the Odin's Eye Jewels and Gems palette. This whole collection I thought was one of their best collections they've ever done. It was so well executed, so beautiful, from the jewelry that they released to the palettes. Both palettes are beautiful. This one is just a little bit lower just because it's a little more cool toned, but I still love this palette. Obviously, it's very high in the countdown, so you know I love it. Of all the palettes I've tried this year, the like mauve tones are my favorite, but even these purple tones I love. Just honestly stunning. I need to pull this out and use it again. I haven't used it in quite a while, but I did love the looks I got out of this. One of their best collections they've ever released, in my opinion. Coming in at number 15, I have the Game Beauty Elemental Blast palettes. So I got two of them. I bought the one in Geo and they sent me the one in Pyro in PR. So we have these like 9-pan monochromatic palettes. They released quite a few of them, but these two are the ones that called to me the most. Pyro is a warm, fiery, red-orange coral palette, which I love these tones, but I think for sure, and I kind of feel like maybe I should have ranked them separately, but it is too late. Maybe I'll say this is 15.5 and this is 15. This one is just, I said it before, like if I was not someone who had a million eyeshadow palettes and I had maybe 5 palettes, this would be one I would want to keep because it creates the most beautiful everyday neutral looks that aren't boring. They have a little bit of interest to them with this like mustard undertone. The mattes are more of a silky feeling, not overly pigmented, but extremely easy to use. They go from light to deep. We have a satin shade for the inner corner as well as a matte shade. Maybe they weren't both necessary, but I do get use out of both of them. And the 3 shimmer options here are beautiful, very silky smooth shimmers, not textured, not chunky, just stunning. I love this palette. I love it. Coming in at number 14, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Fairy Frolic palette. This is not a new palette. This came out a long time ago, and I actually have it in the old formula, but it is still ranking very high up on the countdown because even with the old formula, it is so, so good. The shimmers are really pretty, really smooth, really shiny. I love the selection of mattes in here that you're getting. It's very, very easy to create a cohesive look. All of the shimmers go with all of the mattes. It's a pretty easy palette to create looks out of. It doesn't require a lot of thinking, which I really enjoy. You know, it's easy and foolproof, and the quality is phenomenal. And it's a neutral palette with a twist, in my opinion. You can get a neutral look, but you can get a colorful look as well. And I love all the looks I've gotten out of this palette. Coming in at number 13, I have the third palette from the Perfect Worlds collection. This is the Planet Spirit in collaboration with Betty Jean. I love the packaging with her on the front. And then on the inside, it may be surprising, and it was surprising to me that when I saw the 3 palettes being launched, this was the one I thought I was going to get the least amount of use out of just because it's so colorful. And again, colorful looks aren't always my go-to, especially off camera in my real life. But I loved the looks I got out of this palette. I loved them. Honestly, I fell in love with them. And I think for me, the best way that I really used this palette was 1 matte and 1 shimmer and call it a day. And it created the most easy, cohesive, beautiful, bright looks. And the mattes in this are perfect because they're not so pigmented that they're hard to blend out. And with bright colors like this, I need a matte that's easy to work with because it's already intimidating with it being bright and colorful, but I want it to be easy to work with. And then all of the shimmers are just gorgeous, bright, shiny, beautiful. Betty Jean, you did a great job with this. I really enjoyed this palette, especially for like the summertime. Coming in at number 12, I have the Bella Beauté Bar Recently De-Influenced palette. You guys, this palette shocked me. I love the packaging, actually. I think it's fun. When I tell you, when I would look back at the footage of me wearing this palette, I did create a look. I remember I created a look with this palette and something was wrong with the footage. Either like my microphone wasn't plugged in or I was out of focus, something. And I was so mad because the look I created was one of my favorite looks I've created ever. I used the warm tones, and the mattes in this palette are some of the best mattes in my collection. Ultra buttery, ultra smooth, ultra pigmented. I had such a great experience with this palette that I ended up buying 3 more palettes from the brand on Black Friday. I just think this is so gorgeous. Now, some of these shimmers are a little bit on the chunkier side, which is not my favorite, but a lot of the shimmers here are more on the smooth side, which I love. All of the shimmers in this are special shades, which I'll be honest with you, I would prefer a palette that has a mix of special and regular metallics, meaning metallics that don't shift. Like I like a regular metallic a lot of the time. You know, I don't always want a multi-chrome on my eye, so I like variety. And the other downside to this palette is there's no light matte for a transition shade, which is unfortunate because the mattes are so good. But now I have more mattes that are lighter from this brand that I will be pulling in, but it is phenomenal in terms of quality. Number 11, we have the Sigma Beauty and the Beast palette. Sigma is slowly also becoming one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. Definitely different than the Bella Beauté bar. More user-friendly, more understated, but still absolutely gorgeous. We have a neutral palette with a couple of pops of color. What else can I say? I love the looks I got out of this. All of the mattes here are pigmented and blendable. The shimmer formula from Sigma is one of my favorites because it is impactful and shiny and pretty, but not, how do I say this? It's not like a multi-chrome or something that's like bam in your face, but still really pretty, shiny. I don't want to say dry in a way that's a turnoff, but some of them are a little dry and toppery, but in the most beautiful way. Again, the looks I created from this were gorgeous. I created a purple look over here that was so beautiful. I mean, I'm just really in love with the quality of this palette. The only thing I would want is one matte that is slightly lighter that I can use as a transition shade. Like if this shade was just a little bit lighter, that would be great. But other than that, a really well done palette. Okay, we have made it to the top 10. Let's do it. So coming in at number 10, I have the Odin's Eye Stone and Rock palette. This of the two from that George's Divine collection is the one I prefer because it's got neutrals and it's got greens. I'm predictable, what can I say? I love that we have a matte black and a matte white. And this matte white is a white that has a slight like bluish green undertone. It's so interesting. Like looking at it in the pan, you don't see it, but when you put it on, you can see just a slight bluish green undertone, which is so pretty for a white. We have really beautiful warm greens. We have a cool toned like emerald green up here. And I just love the selection of mattes here. The mattes in this are gorgeously blendable pigmented. And we have a multi-chrome, which is called High Spirits, which is so beautiful. We have a super dark metallic. We have a multi-chrome up here that is like lighter minty color. We have a neutral metallic. You can create a neutral look. You can create a green look. I love greens. One of my favorite colors to wear on my eyes. You're gonna see a couple other green leaning palettes coming up. This one is done so incredibly well. Coming in at number 9, this is my favorite ColourPop palette that launched this year, and this is the Smokin' Hot palette. It is a mega palette, so she's a big one, but stay with me. I love warm tone neutrals. I love oranges, I love reds, I love warm browns, and this has me covered. I think the quality of this palette is very good. The mattes are very good. There are different shimmer formulas in here. We've got more standard metallics. We've got shinier metallics. We have these glitter hybrids. I love that we have a matte and a shimmery inner corner highlight for me. I like that it goes all the way to a super deep dark brown. We've got oranges, reds. We even have some like more cranberry leaning colors. Every time I create a look with this, I love how it comes out. And to me, that is like the best case scenario, right? Like every single look I create with this palette. I mean, are they very different looks? Maybe not. But I love the look. I can't deny I like the look. So this is a keeper for me. Coming in at number 8, it is actually the palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today. And this is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. This is my favorite palette that she launched this year. I think it's a beautiful one, obviously. It's coming in so high up in the countdown. This formula is so good. I love that there are no cream to powders, which for me is a plus. We've got a variety of different mattes. We've got a light one that works for me for the inner corner. We've got several different more transition type shades. We have a deepening up shade. And I did use this again today because I wanted to see how deep I could get my eye look to go. And I was able to create more of a smoky look here. I used the shade Filigree all over my lid, and I used this in the outer corner, and I actually used the shade Sheen just to tap on top to create a little bit more of a sparkly look. I love the shimmers in here. There again are a couple of different formulas where we have more standard metallics, and then we have these like wet effect shades that she's calling them, where they are more of like a topper type of situation, and they're beautiful. For me, the only reason this isn't coming in very high at the top of the countdown is just because I like the other things more, but also this is pretty one-noted. Like it's a very rosy neutral palette. You can't get a ton of other looks out of it. I just like to have a palette that I can get a couple of different looks out of. Quality-wise, fantastic from Natasha Denona. Coming in at number 7, I have the Sigma New Mod Mini. I am really regretting not buying the full New Mod palette because I love this palette. Should I buy the full size? Do I need to buy the full size if I have this? Because aren't these some of the exact shades in the palette? I think they are, so I don't need to buy it. I just talked myself out of it. I absolutely love how this palette is laid out. We have 4 different mattes that go from light to deep with 2 in between. We have 3 different shimmers that again are that good Sigma shimmer formula where they give impact on the lid, but they're not like wet or creamy to the point where they might crease or they're like too much. This is like a palette that you could wear every day if you want more of a subtle look for daytime. If you don't like a super deep vampy look, you can tone this down. There are some palettes, you know, indie palettes, it's hard to tone them down, let's put it that way. But you can, of course, make this smoky and make it good for nighttime. I'm not making sense, guys. I've been filming for a really long time. Stay with me, okay? Stay with me. It's a good palette. I love the color story too. Like I'm really getting into rosy mauve tones. I love it. Coming in at number 6, I have the Nomad Cosmetics Okavango Delta palette. This is my favorite Nomad palette that came out this year. Love the cover. It matches my chair. I always say that. I can pet the palette and pet the chair. It's really, really fun. And then we have neutrals and we have greens. Like I've already said, I love neutrals and I love greens. But the thing about this palette that I like really that I like is that all the greens are warm greens. I prefer a warm green. I don't love cool tone greens that lean blue. It's just not my favorite. So the row of greens here are just right up my alley. The row of warm tone neutrals is right up my alley. And then we have a row of cool tones, but they're not grays. They're still browns. The silver here is so pretty. I love that they have kind of like the stripes or the spots like the animals in the safari, and I love the embossings on the pan. I always love Nomad's theming. The execution of all of their collections is always so well thought out and so well done, and I just love this color story. I love this color story. All right, we're in the top 5 now. So coming in at number 5, I have the eyeshadow palette that I wore on my wedding day, and it may seem really boring, but I wore it on my wedding day, so that tells you how much I love it, and that is the Natasha Denona Mini Nude. Again, if I was a normal person, which obviously I'm not, and I only had a handful of eyeshadow palettes, this would be one that I would use the crap out of because it's so cohesive, the way that this is laid out, and the looks that come out of this are just stunningly breathtaking. I know it seems boring, but I don't know what it is about these shadows. They're just so beautiful. So you have these 2 really good, differing in depth mattes. We have 3 different shimmers that are very different. One for the inner corner, 2 options for the lid if you want to go a little deeper, if you want to go a little more gold warm. I love how my makeup came out on my wedding day. It's a beautiful neutral palette that's sophisticated. Like the look is sophisticated. It's not over the top, but it's still glamorous. It's a wonderful mini. It's a wonderful mini. Coming in at number 4, I have the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyquist Trick or Treat palette. When I opened this up, when I received the package in the mail, my breath was taken away. My breath was taken away at this color story. I love greens, I love neutrals, I love warm tones. That's what I'm getting out of this palette. I love that there's an orange. I love this little section with like the reddish browns. We have a true red. We have a deep dark brown to deepen up the look. We have this like mustardy yellow. I love having this like cream shade for the inner corner for any look that I might do. I love the greens in this palette as well. This just is so appealing to me. Like I said, I love a palette where I can get a neutral look and a colorful look, preferably a warm look, and I can get so many of those things with this palette. We have great formulas, of course, because it's Odin's Eye, and I love Angelica. She is one of my friends, so I'm a little biased, I have to admit, but even if her name was not on it, this color story speaks to me. Top 3, you guys, I'll be honest with you, they could all fluctuate depending on the day, although I will say my number 1 I knew was going to be my number 1. 2 and 3 especially could be flipped at any moment. And up until the moment of ranking, I was flipping them back and forth because they are quite interchangeable to me, if I'm going to be honest. But as it stands right now at this moment, my number 3 palette is the Unearthly Cosmetics Sorceress Smoke. I already told you about the formula, the new formula from Unearthly is phenomenal. The mattes are pigmented. The shimmers are beautiful. Wet, shiny, sparkly. And this is a neutral palette with a twist. You can get green looks out of it. You can get warm neutral looks. You can get cool tone looks. I even can get a kind of like a blue leaning look with this multi-chrome called Nightshade. It has, or is it a duochrome? I'm not sure, but it has like blue and purple reflect in it. I did wear this not too long ago in a video and I loved how my look came out. This is one of those palettes again where whenever I use it and I finish my look, I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, this look looks beautiful every time. Every time. The look comes out beautiful. I love that it can be dark and smoky, but it can be light. If you want it to go light, you can go light. But I love the option to be able to deepen up a look because I am going to do that most of the time. All of the tones go together so well. It's not hard to create a look. This is my number 3 palette. My number 2 palette is the sister palette to that palette, in my opinion. They came out at the same time. This is the Unearthly Cosmetics Fall Magic palette, the remastered version. I love the original. And I remember when she showed this on one of her lives, because Amanda does lives a lot on Instagram, like kind of sneak peeking products. I was in an airport and I was waiting for my plane and I was watching her live and I just remember the moment that she showed this palette. That's how special it is to me. I was like, wow, that captures fall magic, but in a completely reinvented way where it's related to the old version. It's not the same, but it's not so different that it doesn't make sense. We can create a green look, we can create a neutral look, we can create a pinky purple look, which I did recently, and then we have a deep dark brown to deepen up any other look that I may want. A lot of these shimmers are shifting shimmers, but they're also standard shimmers. And again, the quality of these shadows is so good. Same good new formula that Unearthly has. I just like this one in this moment a little bit more because there's a little more variety compared to Sorcerer's Smoke, in my opinion. And I like every single shade. Every single shade in this palette I would use. There's no shade in here I'm like, I wouldn't use that. So that's a good sign to me. And coming in at number 1, can I get a drum roll, please? This came in at number 1 when I ranked my palettes halfway through the year, and it remains my number 1 palette. And I know some of you probably think it's so boring, but I just love the palette. What can I say? So it's the Full Fantasy palette from Lunar Beauty and Laura Lee Los Angeles. Packaging, 10 out of 10. Love the raised details with the sky. It's so pretty. And then on the inside, I can create a neutral look out of this. I can create a green look with this. I can create a purple look with this. That's all I need. I love neutrals, I love greens, I love purples. And all of these shades are so easy to use. The mattes are not hard to work with. They're very, very, very easy to use. We have a very light shade that I can use in my inner corner. We have a black. I love that. I've been really liking deepening up my looks this year, like I already said. And I love, again, that we have more green leaning neutrals. It still leans neutral, but it definitely has an olive undertone. I love having a matte purple. This duochrome Aries is a blue to purple. Love that. Honestly, the other thing I like about this is, I don't know what it is, like my age or preferences. I like having a palette that doesn't have all special shades. Sometimes I just want a really pretty shimmer that's a standard shimmer. I don't want it to be dull or like powdery or heavy looking, but I want it to be shiny and pretty, and that's it. I don't need a multi-chrome every single time I do my makeup. I like having a regular shimmer. So we've got quite a lot of regular shimmers in here, but we do also have some special shades like this duochrome, So I can mix it up and add a little extra something if I want to, but I have the option to just get a very pretty neutral look. And that is why I'm reaching for this palette so much. And this is why, honestly, I could, well, I shouldn't say this. I was gonna say, I could live with just having this palette for a whole month with nothing else. I don't want to do that. I won't do that. But if I had to, I could, right? Because I can create a variety of looks. Formula is great. Color story for me is great. For some people, it might be a little boring, but I really, really enjoy this palette a lot. All right, and that is it for this palette ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Listen, this was a long one. If you are still here, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful new year. I will see you in the new year. If you want to enter the giveaway, please check the description box. I will put down there in the description box the rules of the giveaway. Go ahead and check that out. Everything that is on my face, by the way, will be in the description box if you want to know. I want to hear from you. What is your favorite palette that you tried this year? Or like top 3. Give me like a top 5, top 3, whatever you want, or just one. If you have one that you've been reaching for a lot, let me know in the comments because I love hearing from you. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot when you do that. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. I do upload videos weekly and I'd love to see you back on my channel again. I want to thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.